Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel. We're just getting all the panelists to come through. Today's panel discussion will be the role of innovation for development in Africa. We have all our speakers. We are just waiting for Kudzai to come back on. So while we're waiting, maybe we can go around and have our speakers just introduce themselves. I'll introduce myself last, and then we'll start the discussion. Charles?
Hi, thanks a lot, Ital. My name is Charles Uje. I am the CEO of HYBA. We are a Pan-African innovation firm in Africa. I'm currently dialing in from Lagos in Nigeria.
Brilliant. Eva?
So thank you, Ital. Hi, everybody. My name is Eva. I'm based in Dakar, Senegal. I'm the director for community and communication at IFO Policy, the Innovation for Policy Foundation, and we support public policy co-creation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Khalid? Khalid, hello? Khalid, can you hear us?
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Ital. I am Khalid Ali. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so this is Khalid Ali. I'm in Khartoum. Can you hear me?
Okay,
now?
so yes, it's much better now.
Okay, I'm just going to kill the camera, see if that saves us some bandwidth. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I was saying I'm Khalid Ali.
Khalid?
I'm a founder. Yes. This is Khalid Ali in Khartoum. I am a founder at Impact Hub Khartoum. I'm an advisor to a few startups and hubs, consultant, business development lead, programs manager. But most recently, I'm very excited about this. I've been advising the government of Sudan on a possible startup act. This is something that we've been working on for a very long time, and it seems like it's finally coming to fruition. So very excited about that. Excited about being here as well. Thanks for hosting me.
Great. We'll circle back and ask you a little bit on that startup policy. I am your intermediate host for today. Well, my name is Ethel Kofi. I am CEO of Adele Technology Consulting, a consulting house out of Accra, where we work in the intersection between technology, strategy, and policy. And I'm also the founder of Women in Tech Africa, one of Africa's largest women in tech groups, or a network of about 5,000 women across 30 African countries. Now, we have a very important topic to discuss today, which is the role of innovators in developing Africa. Now, I'm going to read the blurb a little bit, and I'm going to go into the questions. So due to the increase in the need to solve dynamic problems faced for the sustainability and the growth of its economy, innovators are essential to the development of Africa. Innovators often birth responses to present hurdles and perceived future challenges, and their contributions lead to the development of strategic startups in different sectors, which strengthens Africa's economic transformation and repositions the continent in line with the technological trend of the global economy. It cannot be overemphasized that innovation is a crucial factor for economic expansion, as it reduces the length of time needed for structural change on the continent. Now, Charles, you actively work in innovation across 3 continents, including Africa. Why are innovators important in taking Africa forward now? particularly?
Oh, thanks, Vital. This is a very interesting question. I mean, I would respond by saying that, you know, as much as Africa is a place where we're looking at many big challenges, it's also a continent of opportunities. There are several diverse needs that exist. One of them definitely our population. By 2050, it will double to about 2.5 billion people. This in itself is a market. However, there are diverse needs across the masses as we look at this population, whether it is around food, whether it is around healthcare, whether it is around education, energy, environment. These challenges and needs all require diverse solutions. And one of the things that we are recognizing as we go along and as we innovate on the continent is that Africa is unique. We cannot keep on importing solutions and ideas from outside. We need to grow homegrown solutions. We need to adapt even these solutions that are coming from outside. And we need a good bottom up and also from a top down, kind of solution. So I would say that, innovation is really needed. Innovators are needed. We need to figure out, even right now, how to help them, how to develop them, how to even scale these solutions that they are bringing forth to the table. So for Africa to prosper, innovators are required. These are my thoughts.
Brilliant. We now have Kudzai here, so she'll take it from here, Kudzai.
Thank you very much, Ethel. Quite appreciate, you getting us started in this way. And indeed, this is the panel that many of us have been waiting for to speak on the role of innovators in developing Africa. And I know that Ethel, you yourself are not new to this space. You have played a very important and active role in this, work of building a resilient and innovative Africa. And I'd want to ask you to go ahead also and introduce yourself this morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where our listeners are at. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what is your definition of innovation in Africa?
Right. Ethel Kofi, I wear a number of hats, as I mentioned earlier. I founded Women in Tech Africa, which works on the policy and the training, the training, and the networking side to support women in the technology space in Africa. And then I ran a consulting firm out of West Africa, which does strategy advisory, technology strategy advisory. Now, I think the conversation about innovation in Africa it's sometimes elating and sometimes infuriating, I think, because half the time the words seem to be bandied around, from leapfrog to, and I think it's become there's a lot of cliches when we talk about innovation and talk about innovation in Africa. I think there are two ways to do this, right? So there are lots of people that have used innovation to develop their economies. There are lessons to be learned there. But I'm particularly interested in Africa being looking inward and understanding our particular strengths, where we can build particular niches, where we have particular advantages over the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend not to do that. We tend to look at, let's go copy someone else. Let's go be like someone else. And I think that when we learn to use our particular advantages and then begin to develop, I think, for instance, there's a simple example of a couple of years ago, I read a book of what was called Jugad Innovation, which is talked about necessity innovation. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful that within Africa, because there is a lot of necessity innovation within Africa, that we would take it, codify it, and teach how teach the steps within necessity innovation. Yes, it's because we don't necessarily have the money and the funding, but that gives us a distinct advantage to be lean in how we do R&D, lean in how we innovate. So yes, it infuriates me sometimes, but I think there is hope for the future.
Lovely. I think a very interesting thoughts there. I mean, some of the things you've already shared could push us for quite a while, but we will come back to it, particularly because we know that, it's mostly say that most entrepreneurship in the continent is necessity entrepreneurship. And it will be interesting then to deep dive around necessity innovation. But we'll hear more from you, Ethel. I would go ahead and invite Khalid just to introduce yourself and tell us your definition of innovation or your understanding.
Thanks. Thanks for hosting. Khalid Ali, I'm here in Khartoum, Sudan. I'm a founder at Impact Hub Khartoum. I'm an advisor to Savannah Innovation Labs. I've been working with the local ecosystem for 4 or 5 years now. Again, multiple hats. I do the advisory and consulting part. I do a lot of program management and business development. Recently been advising our government in working towards a Startups Act, which is quite exciting to us. Eva would be thrilled to hear that we leverage some of the IFA policy thinking also and try to support the government in pushing towards a more conducive environment for startups. On the question of innovation, I have to agree with Phil, and I want to take that one step further. I want to say, to me, innovation is also associated with impact. It is great that you can come up with a new idea or a new model or a new product or service or even a portfolio of new things. But the question in my mind is always, what value does that bring? And who do you bring that value to? The issue of copying or leveraging ideas from outside, that's quite annoying, and I'm sure we all struggle with these, imported ideas. There's nothing wrong with being inspired, with startups or even ecosystems that have made it. But what about your local context, right? Who are you delivering this value to? That's pretty important. So to me, what is good is what is applicable in context and what adds value and what can have measurable impact. This is how I look at innovation, at least from where I stand right now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Khalid. And last but not least, we are quite honored to have Eva. I'm sure some of you were able to participate in a session that she held, a fantastic one. And it's great to have her back again on this particular session. And perhaps we could end with you, Eva. Just introduce yourself, the work you do, and then tell us in your context, what is innovation? What is innovation for Africa? Why is it important?
Thank you so much, Kudzai. We had the chance to do a quick round of introduction with Etel. And as I was saying, I'm from the IFO Policy movement, which is a movement hosted by the Innovation for Policy Foundation. And what we really leverage on the continent is to support public policy co-creation at scale. And we do it in many ways, in building alliances to see how a movement, and more particularly herb leaders and innovation leaders, can build this bridge with their government in supporting changes and policy reform processes. We also work in co-creating policy. So we have some methodology. One of the main one is the Innovation for Policy process. That is a really iterative framework based on the method we're using in our innovation space, such as design thinking, to optimize public policy co-creation. And we also develop open source technologies to push and boost consultation at scale. I'm quite... my definition of innovation is quite linked to what Khalid was saying. I need to say that for me, innovation is a process. I really see it as a tool. And how can this tool be used to make ecosystem, to make sectors, to make solution more efficient, more effective, and in this sense more impactful to the communities or to the society that they are delivering for.
Right. Thank you very much. And now that we are very clear on our panelists, and we've done 1.5 rounds of introduction, I would want us to now deep dive into the content itself. We are running with a very important theme here, building a resilient, innovative Africa. And I already like where our conversation is going. Clearly, all of the panelists agree. I sense a consensus when it comes to how innovation must be impactful, how it must deliver value, and perhaps how it must be unique to our African continent context. I would want to invite, participants. I can see that people are streaming in. As of now, there are at least 122 participants. I want you to invite you, as we go to begin, to just put into the chat box there your definitions of innovation. What do you, as the attendees, think innovation is? What do you think it must be for us in Africa? What is a conversation we must have? Because in as much as we have a discussion panel here, we would also love to start to hear from you as a floor. Do you agree with our definitions? Do you agree with our insights? And what are your thoughts around it? So please do feel free as we are going throughout the conversation to begin to put in your thoughts into the panel, into the chat box, and we can be able to move forward. Now, I'd want us to deep dive a bit because I know that we have specialists here, and I'm going to just pick on the panelists sort of randomly and ask them some few questions that I would hope they'll be able to respond from their experience and as well from the outlook they see from, for Africa. We as Afrilabs actually have a mission. We reworked, and I think our chairperson, spoke to this at the beginning. How we've reworked our mission. We put in a lot of work in there as a board, and our mission now is that as Afrilabs, we aim to support innovation hubs and their communities to raise high potential entrepreneurs that will stimulate economic growth and social development in Africa. And so we're very careful in curating this panel to bring in, some of the leading participants in innovation in the continent, and they will continue to give us important insights in that regard. I'm going to go back to Ethel and ask, you've been around, Ethel, for a while. You've worked in several continents, and I really like the fact that you work with the majority in Africa, which are women. And what are the opportunities that you see? What are the opportunities that you see in and through innovation for economic expansion for this continent? And how can we perhaps leverage the opportunity of the internet? Please go ahead and unmute yourself. That's the 2020 statement, eh?
Yes, forgive me. This is the 2020 statement. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Well, here's what I thought it was interesting when I looked at the annual gathering, and I realized that Mozilla was one of the partners for the annual gathering, right? Because part of that conversation is part of the ethos of Mozilla, as I was just checking out a few days ago, is the fact that the open and free internet is an enabler for innovation globally, and Africa is not an exception. I think that, but I do want to bring it back to the fact that innovation in Africa has to be thought of as finding the solutions that are fit for purpose. Right? Now, one of the things we don't do well is fit for purpose. We forget that mobile is a big thing, and so people jump to internet, and I keep telling people USSD is an amazing innovation.
Tell us more.
It's an amazing because it's accessible. Anybody can do star, whatever, and they can access information and they can interact. They can all of a sudden have access to banking. They have access to e-commerce. They have access to things that while we're waiting to deal with low-cost phones, right? While we're waiting to solve the problem of low-cost phones and rural access to internet, we have solutions that are there. Not the most sexier solution. USSD is not very sexy, but it will get. I keep saying it will get people buying online and into the behavior of buying online, because I'm using buying online now because the pandemic and e-commerce have coincided in a beautiful way for Africa. And so I'm particularly buying more online than I've done in years. But part of that conversation is if we can get people in our rural areas selling and buying using USSD, we've opened a whole new world of economic exchange. we're not going to sit there and wait for, forgive me, MTN or Airtel or all the Orange
Or
to
Econet.
or Econet to be forced by governments, because and there's a lot of governments that have the rural access strategy and are almost forcing telcos and players in the market to give rural access. And they are looking at their numbers and saying, oh, it doesn't make sense. So why would I, it doesn't make economic sense. And so while we're waiting to fix those issues, I think there are things that are available now, and USSDs are small. There are things that are available now that we can use to begin to get our people used to doing things a certain way. Before then, once they have internet, it is the next step to that, using the internet and using the web for commerce. And yeah, so anyway, that's my take on the internet opportunity. I know I didn't necessarily, but I love it. I wanted to take the step back because I think we need to get our people used to, before we, once we can provide that infrastructure, they will be ready and willing.
Absolutely. I really love that you've taken us literally back, and thank you for dragging the entire continent on this regard. I know that there are a whole lot of, government types that are listening in, perhaps even some of the internet companies themselves, they won't be smiling at you. But USSD is certainly a very powerful thing. And you just prompted me and preempted me to start to think about, we laugh about what we call African aunties, who can barely use a phone. They'll be literally using their finger, to type. So very important thing that you're bringing in there to say, before we bring them to the supposed digital age, let's try and maximize the USSD age. Let's get people to actually get used to using mobile, because I know most of our African, internet, if we're to talk of it, is on mobile devices anyway. Have we exhausted USSD? And maybe I would try and throw that to the gentleman in spectacles. Charles, would you want to weigh in on what Ethel has said? I could tell that you were itching to get in there. I know you've actively also worked in, at least 3 continents, around issues to do with innovation, and particularly Africa, including Africa as well. And what are your thoughts? What's your initial response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I really align and resonate with what Etel has mentioned as it relates to, trying to see how we can use technology to move the ladder. And, starting with basic technology could actually be a very good first move. I want to also say that technology is a very interesting enabler. As we look at it beyond technology and we start looking at some of the other nuances or some of the other drivers of innovation, especially around how do we leverage existing behaviors, in particular, whether it is sectors or challenges that we see in the market. Because a lot of times, even though we see technology as one of the solutions, it needs to be combined with other elements as well. So whether it is on the business side, whether it's on the humanity side, we really need to see how do we bring all these elements together. Let me cite an example here, way back in one of my work assignments about 15 years, where we were basically trying to unlock the economies of rural markets in West Africa. And when we started, we basically looked at a village setting, and tried to understand how trade really works. And by immersing ourselves in their own behavior, in their own activities, in their own realities, we were able to get the insights around how things really work. And then we figure out how we could basically restructure and coordinate these elements together, and then layer on technology to automate and enhance and optimize it. And this is where innovation becomes fun, because it's really a fusion of what's already working, and you are basically trying to improve it and put it in structures that you can really rapidly scale. I mean, 15 years later after that project, when we look at the economic flow of value through that project, it was over $1 billion. Hundreds of thousands of people, getting employment and being empowered. So, starting and looking at how do we take technology and how do we link it up with other elements of our human lives, whether it's business, whether it's people, whether it's culture, and really bringing this combination of solutions together. For me, I find very exciting. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. I really like the idea of village because I know that for most of us in our African countries, for many of us, the demography is such that most people are in rural areas. And it's really nice that you were very deliberate in going to the village and you raised that point that, innovation is really a mixture of things that are already existing, human trends that are already there, and then bringing in a few novel ideas. So I was just trying to think, I come from in Zim, a rural place called Chakoa, giving them Facebook. Like Ethel was saying, a Facebook for Zimbabwe is of absolutely no use. But getting the entire village banked would be of great use because it's an agricultural area. Now, I'd want Khalid to just weigh in on that score and perhaps respond to the submissions that have come in so far. I know that Khalid, you work. You're one of our very mature members at Afrilabs, and you have worked with hubs, you have worked with entrepreneurship support organizations over time. And how do you see hubs and innovation support or entrepreneurship support organizations, playing a key role in supporting the innovation process, if I may call it that, as well as just the ecosystem in general? How do you see yourselves coming in, and people like you, how do you come in to support innovation in the way that Ethel and Charles have already sort of highlighted, where we make sure that it is practical, it is useful? What is your experience with, innovators? Are they building a Facebook for Africa? Are they building a silicon whatever? What should we be doing? Tell us.
Excellent question. Like I said, I think context is important. Context is critical. Impact is important. And if you think of these hubs as a backbone of the ecosystem in any place, because it's the convenient place, right? Hubs is where people meet, exchange business cards, exchange business ideas. They open opportunities for each other, a network, right? But then, if you look at the past 7 or 8 months with this whole global pandemic and COVID economy, it is clear the business model on which hubs as co-working spaces existed is not going to sustain. It is dangerous now that you have so many people. Like I think of Impact Hub, last year and how many events we hosted and how many networking events did we have. And I think now, do I want to bring all of these people in close proximity in these conditions now? And the answer is probably no, right? So you get to lose a little bit of the value of bringing people together. But then it's important that now you observe things like social distancing. Your hub doesn't become a hub for spreading the pandemic, right? So what's going to happen? I mean, now these hubs face existential problems, right? How do you generate revenue to stay open, keep the internet going, keep the lights on, the members that you could have hosted pre COVID era come in and work out of your space? Obviously, the state model of the hubs is not going to sustain. And I'm thinking these hubs need to continue to do their mission, continue to be the backbone or part of the backbone of this ecosystem. But now we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to start thinking of new ways of engaging. So this global gathering, we were supposed to be in Morocco this year, right? And we were all excited about seeing each other and connecting with, making new friends and all that. But the global gathering has to go, COVID or no COVID, and now we sit on a platform, on a digital platform, and we're still able to have these important conversations and give and take. So, I mean, likely these hubs will have to reinvent themselves, find a way of offering more services. The shift to digital seems just logical and natural, but then you think about the infrastructure issues and the costs associated with it. And maybe to that end, people should look at new partnerships. Maybe we go and connect with the MTNs of the world and the Liquids of the world and the Zanes of the world and say, there is value for you as MNOs to connect with these hubs and offer value add for different segments that you don't have access to. I don't have a straight answer of how hubs will reinvent themselves, but what's for sure is they are important because this is a place where ideas.
Okay, it looks like there is.
And new synthesis has come out of that, and that has to continue. Conversation will have to continue, and we just have to find a way of continuing to exist in a digital format.
Right. Thank you very much, Khalid. I think key from your submission there is that hubs have to reinvent themselves, and the innovators we work with will have to somehow also continue to reinvent themselves. And I think you know what is certainly coming out of this discussion may be a need to relook for everybody how we work together, how hubs work together with internet companies. I like how it was just raised that there's opportunity on USSD. Perhaps we should revisit that, see how we can get more people participating, go back to the village model, like Charles was saying. And then, Eva, I know that your work is largely on policy. I'd really be interested to know that from all of the submissions that have come through so far, and from these, I sense that we are in broad agreement around, localizing innovation, starting from the very bottom, leveraging things that are already happening. How do you think, and from your experience, how in the best cases that you've seen, how can we get policies, because I know government folks are listening as well, that incline towards and enable this innovation we're talking about in Africa? Should we be asking government to sit on Econet and force them to give, innovators in our communities USSD so that they work with them? Because perhaps Econet is doing everything. I mean, Zim, people are always accusing it. I've been to Nairobi. I've heard people in Kenya accusing Safaricom of not really playing ball with innovators. Maybe they're doing a bit more than our local ones. And I'm sure for all of you in your respective countries, we may have all have heard something around that. I'll be interested to know, what you believe from what you've seen in the governments that have done best. What are policies that would really enable innovation in Africa? What are your learnings from the best cases you've seen, so far in terms of innovation and policy as well as government support?
Thank you, Coach, so much, because I think a lot of points, that was shared was very interesting. And as Charles was saying, I think we should look at technology from the solution, but also from the users of that technology. And for us, it's just the same in the policy area. We look at the policy as the instrument, but we also look at the policy users. And we believe that the policy users, which are the people that are affected by the policy itself, by the public policy, need to be driven and share their needs and share what they want to see as changes to impact their society and to impact their businesses in regard to entrepreneurship in innovation ecosystem. And what we have seen around the continent, and of course, as it was mentioned, the crises have just leveraged the need to have new reforms and to be able to change the paradigm in how we are working with our government, how we are creating relationship between the users, but also between those users and the government. And we believe, and as you know, our vision at IFO Policy is that the future is co-created. And that's why we will take many ways and many methods, which is innovative for the way that we use the traditional way to make public policy, but also in a way that we allowed even the ecosystem players to understand each other and to be able to work together. And while we will start those public policy process, we learned that it was really important to build alliance between the ecosystem players, because even the innovation space are not that used to work together. We don't know what are the programs that the others are delivering to the ecosystem. Sometimes we don't understand that we need to be working together to structure in a way the ecosystem so that it can positively impact the startup that we are supporting. And just creating those alliances, we see that we were targeting public policy topics, but it was really important to create this trust space where there is this efficacy between the ecosystem players. And that's something we have seen in Sudan with the creation of the Sudan Innovation and Entrepreneurship Network. We have seen that also in Burkina Faso yesterday during the session. Sarah was sharing how it was important and how just this public policy process have helped them understand that they could look for more growth of the ecosystem at national level if they understand what is the right way to be working together. And in several countries, for the Francophone part mostly, where I'm involved, we see those association of entrepreneurship communities getting together to see how they can co-create together these values and this impact, and at the same time how it could help popularize the public policy interest. And it's really happening, in Mali, it's happening in Ivory Coast. So there is a lot of countries that really learning from that. When we get into the public policy instrument itself and how we could really support this co-creation at scale, and when I said at scale, it means to address it at different level, so nationally, and as you were saying, could say, to make sure that the definition of innovation, the definition of a startup, as you mentioned earlier, is really related to what happened in the ground, to what is the needed of the people. And then when we look at regional and continental level, it's how we can learn from each other and how we can share our best practices, because one of the challenges that I will have in Dakar are the same that we will find in Ghana, that we will find in DRC, or somewhere else on the continent. And it is not about understanding completely which instruments we need to target at outcomes of the process. It's more about making sure that we're bringing something that is enough iterative, enough consultative to just optimize this co-creation and to be able to hear from the users themselves, and whichever they could be. So that could be in the city, but also including, Charles was mentioning, the people that are in the village and other parts of the countries that are maybe less connected, that are also less familiar with this innovation space and how this innovation can impact their communities. And it's very interesting. While we have been doing this process, for instance, in DRC. DRC is one of the biggest countries that we're having on the continent. It is very different from a region to another. And even the startup themselves and the product that they are delivering and their understanding of innovation is very different from a region to another. And when we're talking about public policy, it's not about looking at a policy that is going to impact only the people that are in the capital. For instance, in Kinshasa, it's about understanding how we could create a policy that will impact at national and all the startups whichever they are. And for that, it's really about even in creating innovation solutions, so in regards to the innovators, the developers, the startup themselves, and in regards to the policymakers, how all of this can come from a bottom-up approach where we just hear from the people. And there is, of course, this trend. Smart Africa, the African Union have been working a lot around the Startup Act processes and how these can bring new reform that is less based on the traditional method of creating public policy, but it's just emphasized the need of giving people the voice, and this voice can be better heard from the government if we are all coming together. So I think this is the first knowledge. The second one is, while we have been working on those Startup Act, I had the chance to lead the process in Senegal, and we had the Startup Act that has been voted last year in December. We just realized that we never had the opportunity to get the ecosystem together. And working with all the ecosystem brings us to create this space where even the government itself was coming together. Usually, we're talking about innovation, so we flow under the digital economy ministries, but we understand that when you're talking about innovation, and if you want to provide tech solution that really impact the people, you need to look at the family ministry, you need to look at the youth ministry, you need to bring in the finance, the taxation office, and all finally the policy makers that are affecting communities at all. And we try to really address this policy based on the policy users, but also to keep in mind that we will be targeting specific instruments based on the knowledge from our entrepreneurship and innovation space. And we came up with other learnings, which are the main topics that are always the areas where the entrepreneurs, where the innovators want changes, but also the areas where the government is looking to do something to impact positively their economy. And just to share them quickly, it is about culture, it is finance, it is education and human capital, governance, infrastructure. We have been talking about internet and, the connectivity and how it affects the people. And of course, the market and how all of this is translating into support. So a lot of learnings are getting out of this work, but we just believe that the first and key message is to engage, but to engage together. That's how we will just bring the most value for the community.
Fantastic. Thank you. You said a lot of things, but I think emerging, if I was going to put it in one word, is certainly to do all of these things together. And I think one of the things we are realizing certainly is that innovation in Africa and innovators are a shared responsibility. Everyone is going to have to come in, from private sector to, innovation spaces, innovation ecosystems, and governments who, whether we like it or not, we cannot avoid in Africa, because even if we try and avoid them, they'll make sure they get into our business. But I've always I've always said that governments are important because when it comes to scale, when it comes to depth, when it comes to reach, none of us can beat them. They have the structures. So if we can co-work, that would be great. I'm going to quickly cross over because we are just left with 15, 20 minutes to some quick things in the chat. And I'll ask my panelists to pay great attention to some of the submissions here, because I'm going to ask you to really pick whatever you want and perhaps respond to some of the things so that we can have a feel of submissions from the floor. So Jennifer here says, to me, innovation must be what drives socioeconomic development in Africa, creating solutions for Africans by Africans within our context. I feel like I should have read that one last, Jennifer, because that really sums it up nicely. Poncelet here asks, will there be a day when we come together on a platform like this and we measure or look at the impact of what we set ourselves to do? Look at where we've gotten to as innovators, what we couldn't do, challenges we face in executing what we could do, a platform where we'll discuss success stories of each other as Africans and the next step forward. Let me just quickly throw that out to the panel to think on. Can you think of, and maybe Charles, you might want to be the first one to take this one, any outstanding African innovations? I recently read a tweet where someone was saying, I am tired of us claiming that Africa is rising. And then when we ask how, people say, can you not look at M-Pesa? So is that all? Is that everything we've done? Is that the greatest African innovation? Or there are other innovations that perhaps we are not bringing to the fore? So something to think about. Someone says innovation is to have creative thoughts, and Charles is laughing there. We'll come back to you shortly, Charles. Innovation is creating tools. I like this one. I believe it's Jeffrey who says Africa is blessed with a lot of resources and possibilities. To me, innovation in regards to Africa is being able to design new strategies of doing things by improving current systems and designing new ones. Okay, I see that these are definitions. Let me quickly drag down to, and you can quickly just also engage as participants with these. Chris Nyasha says innovation is all about coming up with problem-solving methods that are cheaper, better, faster. So panelists, again, I'm going to come to you and ask, can we do this? Can we do things cheaper, better, faster? What are the preconditions we require? Someone says innovation brings comfort. That's Madia there. It's a time-saving tools. Another says innovation. This is an interesting one. Madia says as well, innovation is not a bad thing at all, but it can get people jobless. This one I want to hear from the panelists. Do we believe that? Do we think bringing innovation will render people unemployed? Should we stay in 1984 or should we come through to 2020? So that will be an interesting one. As we innovate, people need to upgrade themselves to come along with it. If not, they may be left behind. Eva, there's a question for you. Please prepare. Looking at policy, how do you see the importance of right policies in country by African governments to drive innovation? What do you think should be done by African governments that's not properly done now, policy-wise, to drive innovation? So I think the rest are really muchly, comments which you can engage with. But I also see maybe one or two other questions which I'll quickly just throw into the panel there, and then we can treat them. Someone says they could die in, it's Hilton, South Africa, the industry, in particular innovation system, felt the best approach to deal with government was to have a standard guide for the innovators and buyers, which is soon to be released in South Africa. And another one, since Victor says our problem is not all of the theory we've spoken about, it's implementation. We need to figure out ways to get innovation to market at scale very quickly. I do agree that there are just too many policies and frameworks sitting on the shelves and in paper. So I would really love, just having sort of harvested some of the thoughts from our audience, dear panelists, I want you to pick a struggle, pick a card, any card, and give us a response. I think, Charles, I prepared you, so would you want to start? Any response?
Well, some of the questions are really very, very interesting. I think one of them that really struck with me is, where are the innovations? Where are the examples? You mentioned that, when somebody talk about innovation in Africa, the first thing that happens or you think about is you think about M-Pesa. I want to say that, there are many, many innovations across the continent, like we all know. I think one of the acid tests of it is when you actually begin to see innovation from Africa being exported. When you start even seeing international demand for those kind of innovations, where Africa comes to a place where we are even teaching the world about how to do how to solve a set of problems, because our problems are unique, but they are also quite deep. They are also quite challenging because of the resources, the resource base that we have, and the difficulty we face, and we are forced to innovate. We don't innovate because it's sexy. Necessity drives us to innovate. I mean, a couple of examples in Nigeria. I teach at one of the universities, and one of my students, she said that she had to innovate around using digital for her product, because she didn't really have the money to set up a showroom. She couldn't set up a showroom. And she's a furniture business. And she was like, how am I going to reach my customers? She had to use digital. And if you see her business today, it's a very exciting company called Taylor. If you see her business today and you look at, she still doesn't have a showroom 3 years after. She sells everything online. She has people buying from her from Europe, from America, from all places, even in Africa, even in Nigeria, even in East, even in South, even in West. And this came as a result of being forced to innovate. So there are many, many examples, whether it's Babangoda and the agriculture side, whether it's Paga being exported to Mexico and it's being used today, so many examples. And I think as Africans in Africa, we need to begin to kind of like, own our own successes, because a lot of times we're always talking about how bad it is, how difficult it is. I think there's so many exciting things going on, and we need to amplify some of these things, not just for amplification, but to learn and then replicate these successes time and time and over again. So these are my thoughts. Africa is exporting and continues to innovate wonderful, beautiful solutions. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that positivity in there. Ethel, we're going to quickly cross over to you. Any responses to, some of the questions, comments there?
I did want to address the people losing their jobs comment. I think that in any situation, in any innovation, there will be winners and there will be losers. Now, the question for us, and I suppose for not for entrepreneurs and startups per se, but for governments and for policy wonks, is how do you then ensure that people are reskilled? How do you ensure that people are retooled, people are ready for the next? It's happened with the Industrial Revolution, right? Once we had cars, people with buggies and horses were put out of business. It will always happen with innovation. The thing is to ensure that when we are putting together policies and strategies, that we are well aware and we are ready to reskill and retool people to be able to join the sort of the new revolution. That's all I have to say about that.
All right, thank you very much. Khalid, would you want to weigh in?
Yeah, on the same point that Ethel spoke about, I don't think innovation is going to render people jobs obsolete. Not at all. I want to give an example. You know, you spoke about examples from Africa for innovation, and it's interesting that it was on a USSD platform. It wasn't digital or on the web. Alain Teff created a USSD service in Cameroon. That was like 3 or 4 years ago. He was an electrical engineering student at the time, and it simply provided information to women about maternity, information that were sent to pregnant women. Once you know you're pregnant, what should you do? What should you not do? And he distributed that service in rural areas. And in 1 year of people using that service, the maternity death toll in that part of the country has decreased significantly. I mean, he has measures. If you look him up, you'll find the entire story quite impressive. All the innovation that Alain did at that time was he made information available to people who wouldn't have access to that information using a simple USSD platform that was accessible to everybody, including the aunties who used, their phones like that. So this is an innovation that provided access to information that saved lives. This is the real impact here. That did not render anybody useless. So yeah, I think we should distinguish between innovation and automating, mechanical work or labor or things like that. Policy also is very important. Once you start getting to the point where you're automating, you have to think.
Do we still have you, Khalid?
How are you gonna protect that population?
I think he left us.
Are you gonna retrain them, equip them with skills that they need so that?
All right. I think we lost a little bit of the last bit there, Khalid, but thank you for your submissions. Eva, you want to respond? I think there was a direct question for you there. Please, you can take it away now before we wind up.
Thank you. To respond to the question, I think there is several instruments that can be taken in place. And just in regard to finance, I mean, there is a real need of pre-seed finance, and how do we really create it also, for instance, guaranteed fund for the startup to have access to a dedicated load, for instance. When we're talking about culture, it's about how do we bring entrepreneurship education to schools at the earliest as possible. How do we create really basic skills or local languages, content for people to really have access to business skills. When it is about governance, we know how difficult it can be sometimes just to formalize your business or to have access to a kind of permit to be exporting your products or to be packaging them, or if we regard to markets, there is a real need of marketing, as it was said. And for me, it's all about building bridges. How do we build bridges between the innovators and rural communities to be able to translate those solutions into local language? How do we create bridge between the innovators and the academics to allow more access to research and development so our projects can scale? So it's all about bridges. And when it comes to policy more specifically, it's and in regard to entrepreneurship, it's all how do we build this bridge between entrepreneur and the government.
Thank you very much, Eva. I'm really loving the level of engagement in the chat as well. We really highly encourage this. And I perhaps just want to isolate one before I do one last round of questions with my esteemed panelists here. So Victor here comes in and says, as a community, another perspective to consider is what are we innovating around? Efficiency or market creation? Efficiency may solve our immediate problems, deal with economic issues of access to jobs, GDP growth, perhaps expansion, but you also need to think through innovation that targets the invisible market. And he ends by saying, which is why I really like the concept of USSD while trying to fix internet penetration issues in Africa. And I think that's a really important submission. And the last one I'll read out there is Manasseh, who says, I like the idea of inclusivity in innovation policy, governments, communities, innovators, entrepreneurship. And he says, thanks, Eva. And I think I'd really love that we wind up on that powerful note. And I'm going to ask each of my panelists now to give us what I would call your parting shot to every one of our listeners, the governments that are listening, the communities, the innovators, the hubs, the entrepreneurship support organizations, and just people who kind of stumbled in this conversation. And what is your final thoughts? I would want that you perhaps let us know what your thoughts are in terms of how we can all contribute to structural change and bring about the economic transformation we desire for Africa. Where should women place themselves? Where should youth place themselves? And indeed, which sectors in Africa may give us the most mileage in terms of innovation? Is there any low-hanging fruit? And yeah, give us your parting shots. So as you wish, can I go the other way around? Eva, your parting shot?
So for me, two quick things. First, we need to co-create everything we want to see as changes together. And second, I believe that the growth of our market is in the informal sector. So let's address that informal sector using our technology.
Indeed, let's address the informal sector using technology. Khalid, any parting shot?
Immerse in your community, understand the issues, understand the reality you live in, get inspired by others, but pretty please do not copy and paste ideas and think that they're going to work because they work somewhere else. Understand the issues and the challenges. Be original, find solutions that work for you, that work for your community, that are profitable and impactful. Those are my parting shots.
Thank you very much. Very important, those ones. And this panel is great English, I'll tell you that. Charles, the man in specs, the man with the connecting beard.
Well, I would like to connect with what someone talked about policy in the chat room, and also the role of government and some of the MMOs. Because a lot of times we need to see how we can scale innovation. And I think as hubs and as innovators, we have a role to play by providing knowledge to some of these stakeholders. It's really around how do we coach, how do we train, how do we share knowledge with these important stakeholders that educates them and informs them about how to innovate rightly, but also how to innovate with us, so that we can solve the problems on the continent and deliver the change and impact that we see. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Charles. And I would last but not least ask for thoughts from my co-moderator, Ethel.
Right. So my last thoughts are that innovation is not just a young man's game. The innovation comes from different areas and different people. So from the rural to the city, to men to women, it comes from different walks of life. So it's not just a young man's game.
Thank you. I like that. I like that. I think oftentimes we segregate on the basis of, age and whatever else. And so I want to thank you once again, Charles. Thank you exceedingly. Ethel, thank you so much. Eva, Khalid as well. Thank you for making time. And may I thank the many people who were, the chats were on fire. I like the engagement there. And I think this will help us to take the conversations forward. I hope you were tweeting. I hope you are tagging the Afrilabs handle so that you can get a retweet today. But I want to just end by saying a great big thank you to my panelists. You've really helped us to start a conversation. It is a journey around the role of innovators in developing Africa and towards us building a resilient, innovative Africa. I want just to end by just saying a few quick things that I think were a summary, because I have a minute of this engagement. I think we've agreed broadly that innovators in Africa are there. They are being born daily, and they're there in every age, in every stage, in every country, in every region. They are there. They do require us to participate with them to bring their innovations to scale. We note that Africa is not a country. What may work in one side may not work in another, but those innovations, all of us can be able to learn from. And it's important that we begin to put them on blast by region. If it means we're going to end up with an Afrilabs Southern Africa, Afrilabs East Africa, Afrilabs North, South, in every space, so that we put those things on blast, that will be really great. When we catalog them, we learn to use them, we replicate them where we can. And so last but not least, let's get ready for the next levels of innovation. Let's use what's already there. Let's learn from that which is existential. And let's begin to solve for Africa every difficult and important problem. Thank you very much for your attention. A big pom-pom and a round of applause and appreciation for you, Charles, Ethel, Eva, and Khalid. Thank you so much. And to all of the people that are listening out there, let us go out. Let us be awesome. Let us build a resilient, innovative Africa. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. The loves and the likes are coming in. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
Please do join us in the next sessions. There'll be a powerful session in the afternoon around hubs, a whole lot of other things coming through, and we will enjoy. Thank you very much. Am I still live? I hope not.